Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the sources, bring you the essential insights, the surprising facts, basically a shortcut to being really well informed. And today we're embarking on quite a powerful exploration. We're looking into the profound history of Black Greek letter organizations. Specifically, we're focusing on the inspiring origins and really the enduring impact of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc. Our guide for this journey comes from excerpts from a really impactful book. It's called Before You Pledge, Essential Information You Should Know About Black Greek Letter Organizations and the Dynamics of Pledging in a Culture of Hazing. It's written by the esteemed historian and sociologist Dr. Michael J. Winfield, Sr., and it features a foreword by J.T. Childs, Jr. So our mission today, well, it's to unpack the, let's say, challenging environment, but also the determined spirit that led to Kappa Alpha Psi's founding. We'll explore the pivotal moments, its evolution, and its lasting legacy.
Absolutely. And to really understand Kappa Alpha Psi's genesis, you really have to grasp the conditions of the time. They were pretty brutal. What's really striking is how that hostile environment in early 20th century Indiana, well, it didn't just influence the need for these organizations, it actually made their very existence a matter of survival and a crucial step towards progress.
It's interesting, isn't it, how our minds often jump straight to the Deep South when we think about racial discrimination back then. But according to Dr. Winfield, Indiana itself was a significant stronghold. Lots of hate, lots of violence towards African Americans. It was far from a safe place.
Yeah, and if you look at the bigger historical picture, historian Howard H. Peckham, in his 1978 book, Indiana, a history, he laid it out pretty plainly. He said, Hoosiers were not racially tolerant. They did not like Indians, and they did not like Negroes.
It's actually shocking to learn that the state's constitution, according to research, even prohibited Black people from entering Indiana. I mean, think about that. Systemic isn't even the word. And this wasn't just some, general dislike. It got extreme. Horrifying, really. Dr. Winfield's research points out the Ku Klux Klan was rampant there. Lynch mobs routinely attacked Black individuals, often with little or no provocation. There was even this journalist, John Bartlow Martin, who wrote about highway billboards. Can you imagine signs that read, "Nigger, don't let the sun set on you here." Chilling.
It really is. And the history of lynching in Indiana just confirms this terror. According to the source, at least 20 African Americans were lynched in the state just between 1865 and 1903. 20.
That number, it just hits you. It's not just a statistic, right? It paints this awful picture of daily fear. It really underscores the courage these students needed just to exist, let alone try and get an education.
So, okay, you have that level of overt hostility outside the university. What was it like for Black students inside Indiana University, trying to learn within those walls?
It's a critical question, because even though IU was tuition-free, supposedly excellent, it couldn't overcome these barriers. Research indicates that very few Black students could actually stay longer than a year, usually financial problems, couldn't find work, plus they were just surrounded by discrimination, bias, general unfriendliness, and surprisingly, according to the source, even some local Black townspeople had strained relationships with the students, just another layer of isolation, really.
Wow, so the university itself wasn't exactly a welcoming refuge either. This benign neglect, the source mentioned. How did that actually play out for those first Black students? Well, exactly. Benign neglect sounds almost passive, but the impact was huge. They weren't allowed in on-campus housing, for starters, and finding decent off-campus housing. A constant struggle. You hear about these pioneers like Harvey Young, the first Black student back in 1892, and Carrie Parker, the first Black woman in 1898. Both of them, according to research, had to leave without finishing their degrees. It's just a stark example of how the system wasn't built for them to succeed. It sent a clear message.
So in this environment, incredibly hostile outside, indifferent inside, the idea of a real brotherhood, a support system, it must have felt less like an option and more like a fundamental need. Is this really where the vision for Kappa Alpha Nu, that's pronounced Kappa Alpha Nu, started to take shape?
Precisely. The situation made that need for mutual support absolutely undeniable.
Yeah.
And that's why the friendship between Ella Watson Diggs and Byron Kenneth Armstrong is so important. They met at Howard University, 1909-1910 school year. Diggs was older, 25, Armstrong just 17. But they formed this powerful connection, shared ideals. According to the source, Diggs was particularly, let's say, disenchanted with his Howard experience, especially with the fraternity that was already there, Alpha Phi Alpha. He and Armstrong actually respectfully declined to pledge Alpha Phi Alpha. Armstrong later described some members of Alpha's Beta chapter as a mixture of gentlemen and adolescent rowdies.
Rowdies, wow.
Yeah, he said they were belligerent, vandalistic, and sought to control or destroy. So you can see that experience really shaped their desire for something very different.
Okay, that context from Howard makes Diggs's vision seem even stronger, right? He wanted a principled fraternity, one that served everyone's needs, focused squarely on enlightenment, brotherhood, not, as he saw it, unproductive stuff. Academic excellence was key. And then, kind of by chance, Byron's cousin, Irvin Armstrong, was already at Indiana University. Byron visited him, liked what he saw, I guess, and convinced Diggs to enroll there in the fall of 1910. Seems like things were falling into place.
It really does seem that way. And Dr. Winfield explains how these two, along with others, started turning those ideals into something real. The driving force behind Kappa Alpha Nu was this deep search for a meaningful bond, brotherhood. So this group, 10 men in total, 8 from Indiana, 2 from Kentucky, that came together, united. Their goal, create an organization where men of color could support each other, find fellowship, which was desperately needed.
And the setting for their first meetings, it just makes the story more powerful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Research describes them as these young princes of promise gathering around a warm stove. It was in the boarding house of Mary Eliza Spaulding, Molly, they called her affectionately, 425 East Kirkwood Avenue, not far from the IU campus.
Yeah, a very humble beginning.
And the source pinpoints a specific night, Thursday, February 16th, 1911. 4 students, Marcus Blakemore, Elder W. Diggs, Ed Irvin, and Byron K. Armstrong, they formed this quartet around Molly's stove, talking about their situation, their struggles, and this urgent desire to start something new, something different from what already existed, built on different ideals.
And this actually brings up an interesting little historical detail. The official founding date, January 5th, 1911, is the recognized date, sure. But Armstrong himself mentioned that some people believe February 16th, 1911 should really be the date. It's a disagreement, testament to how these things sometimes happen organically, unpredictably. It probably won't ever be fully resolved. But it definitely shows the kind of fluid development in those very early stages.
Right. And adding to their motivation, the source mentions this earlier attempt. Another group of students at Indiana University had actually tried to get a fraternity charter before them, but they were turned down for the kind of naive reason that, quote, Indiana was too small a school and too far west.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of rejection must have just hardened their resolve, fueled their determination to make their own way.
Definitely. So Diggs and Armstrong, using their experiences from Howard, dealing with that hostile environment, they clearly put achievement right at the core for all Kappa Vax, that's Kappa men. Research shows they anchored the fraternity's morality, its foundation, on the Christian faith, really positioning Kappa Alpha Nu as trendsetters.
And the way they crafted the fraternity's identity, it's really insightful, very careful work. Armstrong shared that the 3 key principles in the motto and the ritual were Phi pronounced Fi, like Hi Phi Nu and Pi. Phi was chosen because, well, its significance in fraternal groups. Nu, Armstrong said, was inspired by his philosophy teacher, Warner Fite. And Pi was Diggs's contribution. He felt it represented cooperation, something he thought was lacking in the Black community as a whole group at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the final motto, achievement in every field of human endeavor, that was chosen with help from a Greek art professor. It just shows their dedication to intellectual rigor, getting the details right from the start.
Now, the name itself, Kappa Alpha Nu, it has this fascinating but also sadly a challenging origin story. Dr. Winfield explains it was actually inspired by an earlier Black Greek letter organization, Alpha Kappa Nu again, pronounced Kappa Alpha Nu, and that group was established at Indiana University way back around 1903.
Right, this is a really significant point when you think about the whole history of Black Greek letter organizations. The fact that Alpha Kappa Nu existed before 1906, well, it directly challenges that long-held idea that Alpha Phi Alpha was the absolute first African-American fraternity at a predominantly white school. There's credible proof suggesting Alpha Kappa Nu was actually among the very first. It changes the timeline a bit.
Okay, but here's where the name Kappa Alpha Nu hits a really painful snag, directly because of racism. Armstrong recounted that he and Diggs tragically overheard white students making these awful, disparaging remarks. They were calling them Kappa Alpha Nig, a disgusting, racist play on their name.
Just awful.
Yeah, and Diggs, hearing that, he immediately knew. He recognized the gravity of it. The name had to change. It was decisive.
And you have to see that wasn't just like a cosmetic change. It was a profound act. Defiance, self-assertion. turning a racial slur into a symbol of pride, of dignity that wouldn't be broken. So the Greek letter psi, pronounced psi, was chosen to replace nuno, and the fraternity got its distinctive Greek letter symbol. Then on April 15, 1915, the name was officially changed to Kappa Alpha Psi Kappa Alpha Psi. That decision came from the Grand Chapter meeting back in December 1914. It was a huge shift, profoundly reflecting their commitment to race, pride, self-respect, dignity, all in the face of that blatant racism.
And Diggs, being the perfectionist he was, according to the source, he personally prepared all the ceremonial forms. While Byron Armstrong, he was tasked with creating the insignia. They carefully chose crimson and cream for the colors inspired by their alma mater, Indiana University. And the red carnation became the fraternity flower. Very thoughtful, enduring symbols.
Cementing that identity.
Now, what's interesting is that the fraternity, Kappa Alpha Nu initially, chose not to expand for its first 2 years. That seems like a lot of discipline for a new group. They apparently dedicated a lot of time just to strategizing about growth. So what was their approach? How did they manage that early expansion when they finally did it?
Well, according to Armstrong's accounts, it was very deliberate. The Beta chapter came first at the University of Illinois, February 6, 1913. That was a big step. Then came the original Gamma chapter in Indianapolis, December 29th, 1913. And this one was really unique. It was made up entirely of graduate members, leading men from the Indianapolis community.
Oh, interesting. Not just undergrads.
Exactly. And this model, it was kind of a strategic masterstroke, really. It wasn't just about expanding numbers. It ensured financial stability. But maybe more importantly, it created this continuous pipeline of mentorship, wisdom from established men. It really set a standard for organizational strength and resilience.
Smart. And then came the 4th chapter.
Right. Research indicates Kappa Alpha Nu's 4th chapter was set up at the University of Iowa, March 7, 1914. Initially, it was called Delta of Kappa Alpha Nu, but later that name changed to Gamma. So you can see them kind of evolving their chapter naming as they grew.
Okay, now here's something really compelling from the autumn of 1914. There was talk, apparently, a possible merger between Kappa Alpha Nu and Omega Psi Phi. That's Omega Psi Fi. That really speaks to how dynamic things were, maybe collaborative, in Black Greek life back then.
It really does. And what's quite remarkable here, according to research, is the personal connection driving this. Elder Watson Diggs of Kappa Alpha Nu and Edgar Amos Love of Omega Psi Phi. They were actually close friends from their time at Howard University.
So it wasn't just some abstract organizational talk.
Not at all. They were personally communicating, discussing the possibility of merging their fraternities. It was a conversation between peers, friends who respected each other, thinking about a unified future.
But ultimately, it didn't happen, even though both Diggs and Love apparently favored the idea. The source says neither organization was willing to sacrifice any portions of their rituals or founding principles, which you can understand.
Absolutely. Identity is crucial. So after, lengthy discussions, the source mentions Diggs even proposed initiating Omega Psi Phi members into Kappa Alpha Nu. But Omega Psi Phi declined. Both groups clearly valued their distinct identities too much to merge at that point.
Makes sense. So during this time, expanding, considering mergers, how did they maintain their high standards, especially when bringing in new members?
That's a really important question. And according to Dr. Winfield, it was a major challenge, identifying men whose accomplishments really lined up with those founding principles. Diggs strongly believed they needed to attract men who already had stature in their local communities. And that led back to that clever strategy of including graduate members in new chapters.
Right, the role models.
Exactly. They served as crucial role models, provided financial resources. It was key to ensuring quality and integrity as the organization grew.
They also moved pretty quickly into publishing, didn't they? Understanding the need to get their message out, highlight achievements.
They did. Research shows the Journal of Kappa Alpha Nu was first published in April 1914. Now, Alpha Phi Alpha's The Sphinx came out a month earlier, but still, it was very early on. Elder Watson Diggs and Frank Summers worked hard on it, aiming to highlight the accomplishments of Black students. Similar in a way to W.E.B. Du Bois' influential magazine, The Crisis.
And there was this figure at the University of Illinois, Albert R. Lee. Sounds like an unsung hero.
Very much so. According to the source, he basically functioned as the unofficial dean of Black students there. And he was rightly honored with honorary membership in Kappa Alpha Psi on February 15, 1916. It was recognition for his active support, his really meaningful interactions with the Beta chapter members. His guidance was invaluable.
So clearly their focus wasn't just academics or organization building. What about broader commitments? Service, country.
Absolutely. The founders' dedication definitely extended to military service. It's a real testament to their character, their patriotism. Research shows a remarkable 7 out of the 10 founders served in the U.S. military during World War I.
7 out of 10, wow.
Yeah, including Elder W. Diggs himself, who became a captain, and you have examples like Edward Giles Irvin, who served as a combat medic. According to the source, he was even cited for bravery for his actions with the expeditionary forces in France. Real heroism.
Incredible. Now, shifting gears slightly, how did the pledge process become more formalized? You mentioned growth after the war.
Right. So while there were probably informal pledge groups from the start, research shows it wasn't until 1919 that things got really organized. That's when the Zeta Pronounced Zeta chapter introduced the Scroller Club. It was really a direct response to that sudden boom in pledges after World War I. They needed a process that was thorough, effective, and importantly, standardized across the board.
And this Scroller Club, what was the significance of that?
Well, it wasn't just about managing growth. It was actually groundbreaking. According to the source, the Scrollers Club was the very first organized pledge club among any of the Black Greek letter organizations.
Well, first.
The first. It set the precedent. The source notes it was followed by the Pyramid Club for Delta Sigma Theta in 1920, then the Sphinx Club for Alpha Phi Alpha in 21, and the Ivy Club for Alpha Kappa Alpha in 22. Kappa Alpha Psi really led the way in structuring that intake process.
That's fascinating. And what about their involvement in civil rights? Did that start early on too?
Oh, absolutely. Early and sustained. It's incredibly impactful. Research shows that as early as 1924, Kappa Alpha Psi was already participating more fully in social justice work. They were involved in the Negro Sanhedrin Conference, for example. That conference focused on developing actual action plans, legal rights, human rights for black tenant farmers, wage workers, voter engagement. It shows this deep commitment to uplift, to advocacy, that went way beyond just their own members. They were tackling systemic issues.
And there's a specific legal case mentioned, Thurman Watts v. Board of Education in Kansas. Sounds like a precursor to bigger things.
It really was a powerful prelude to the landmark Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision. According to the source, Kappa Alpha Psi members Elisha Scott and R.M. Van Dyne litigated this case. They took it all the way to the Kansas Supreme Court. They were representing an African-American student denied admission to a new junior high school, a school his own community had helped pay for through taxes.
Oh, unbelievable.
And they won. Scott and Van Dyne prevailed. It set a crucial legal precedent for educational equity. Just tremendous work.
Amazing. And then connecting to the bigger picture, they helped form the National Pan-Hellenic Council, the NPHC.
Yes, they became a founding member on May 10th, 1930. And Elder W. Diggs served as the NPHC's first treasurer. For listeners maybe not familiar, the NPHC is the umbrella group for the historically black Greek letter fraternities and sororities, often called the Divine Nine. And its founding was necessary because, as research shows, black-sponsored Greek organizations were just flat-out denied membership in the exclusive all-white fraternity councils back then.
Right, so it was an act of collective strength, self-reliance.
Exactly, ensuring their recognition, their collective voice, their power.
So bringing it up to today, how does Kappa Alpha Psi continue this legacy of service and leadership?
Well, they have various internationally mandated programs that carry that commitment forward. There's the Guide Right program and its flagship initiative, the Kappa League, that provides essential educational occupational guidance for young men, really fostering the next generation. And the Achievement Academy enhances the experience for collegiate members, mentoring, coaching, ensuring success in college and after.
What else? The source mentioned quite a few programs.
Yeah, there are several other impactful ones mentioned in the source. Learn to Live, for instance, that's a collaboration with Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. It tackles critical issues like racial profiling, prepares youth for interactions with law enforcement. Very timely, very necessary. Then there's Lead Kappa for leadership development, Room to Read, focusing on global literacy, Greeks learning to avoid debt, or GLAD, crucial financial literacy work, and also Are You Okay?, which is really important. It addresses black men and mental illness, aiming for culturally responsive treatments to support their well-being. Really comprehensive.
It really sounds like it. We've certainly taken a deep dive today, haven't we, into this remarkable history of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc. From those incredibly challenging beginnings in early 20th century Indiana, through their pivotal role in civil rights, all the way to this ongoing, unwavering commitment to achievement, brotherhood, and service today.
It's profoundly evident, isn't it? How the sheer resilience, the vision of those founders. starting in Molly Spaulding's humble home around that stove, how they built an organization that has just profoundly impacted countless lives. And it continues truly to uphold that powerful motto, achievement in every field of human endeavor. It's really a testament to what you can build with determination and a shared, unwavering purpose.
It really is. And maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener. How can we, in our own lives, draw inspiration from these founders? How do we maintain our principles, our vision, especially when we're faced with immense societal challenges, obstacles? Their story really offers a powerful blueprint for perseverance, I think.
Definitely food for thought.
Now, we've really only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to this rich history. For the complete explanation, you can absolutely purchase the book we've been referencing before you pledge. Essential information you should know about Black Greek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging in a culture of hazing. Again, that's by Dr. Michael J. Winfield Sr., with the foreword by J.T. Childs Jr. It's available on Amazon.com, or you can get it directly from www.questexcelmultimedia.com. That's QUESTEXCEL multimedia.com.
A valuable resource for anyone interested in this topic.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, your insights on this deep dive. Please feel free to leave a message on our message board. Just make sure to include your complete contact information. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We look forward to our next exploration with you.